Hello and welcome to Skills Simplified. In this video series, we are simplifying computer skills. To understand today's video, please make sure you have watched our previous videos. The link to the playlist is below in the video description. In the last video, we learned different computer systems, and as promised, we are back to PCs. Today, we will look at PC hardware. As we saw in the second video, hardware refers to the physical elements of a computer system. Hardware is like Mr. Accountant's brain, his hands, his eyes, his whole body, and things he uses in his office, like his desk and his filing cabinet. PC hardware has two categories, components and peripherals. Let's look at them. First, component. Components, also known as internal components, are the basic parts needed to build a working computer. Components are hidden inside the computer case and are not visible unless you open up the case. Components are like Mr. Accountant's internal organs, like his brain, his muscles, his heart, which are not visible, but Mr. Accountant can't live without them. Next, peripherals. Peripherals are the external devices that could be connected to a PC for adding more functionality. Some peripherals provide us ways to input or get output from PC. Peripherals are like Mr. Accountant's pens and Mr. Painter's colors, which allow Mr. Accountant to write and Mr. Painter to draw. Let's look at different components. On the other hand, what's the fun in just looking at components? Instead, let's build ourselves a new PC. To build a modern PC, we need motherboard, CPU, RAM, hard disk, power supply, and a case to keep all of them together. Let's understand what they are. First, motherboard. A motherboard is the component where all the other components connect to. It's a big circuit board with lots of ports. A circuit board is a board with lots and lots of very thin wires for connecting other devices together. A motherboard provides a port for connecting all internal components and external peripherals. It has a connector for connecting CPU, RAM, hard disk, and power supply. A motherboard not only connects these components but also controls them. This is the first component which gets activated when a computer is turned on. A motherboard is like Mr. Accountant's nervous system. Our body's nervous system is made up of lots of nerves, which are like very thin wires that connect all organs and allows them to talk to each other. Next component is CPU. As we saw in earlier videos, CPU, the central processing unit, is the component that does all the processing. That is, CPU works on the data. A CPU has hundreds of tiny connection points and it sits on a special socket on a motherboard. The CPU connects to the other components via the motherboard. We already know that CPU is like Mr. Accountant's brain, which he uses for working with numbers. Just like CPU, Mr. Accountant's brain is also connected to his internal organs. As the CPU gets really hot, we need to put a CPU cooler to keep it cool. After CPU is RAM. We know that RAM, or Random Access Memory, is the temporary workspace for the CPU to work. RAM sits in RAM slots. There could be many RAM slots on motherboard to be able to connect more than one RAM stick. After RAM is hard disk. Hard disk is the permanent storage for data. A hard disk is connected to a SATA port on motherboard. As hard disks need more power, they are also connected to power supply directly. And finally, to power everything, we need a power supply. A PC power supply has many different cables and connectors for powering up different components. It has a connector to power up the motherboard, another for the CPU, some SATA connectors for hard disks, and other connectors for additional components. Once all these components are securely screwed in the case and connected to the motherboard, our new PC is ready. But before we could turn on our new PC, we need to connect peripherals to our new PC, which we will do in our next video, the PC Peripherals.
Click here to subscribe to our channel for our future videos. Do press the like button if you liked this video and thumbs down if you didn't like it. Mr. Accountant would really like to read your comments, so please go ahead and write for him. And keep learning new skills. Thanks for watching. Bye!